Hello everybody and welcome back to the CPD Group podcast. Today we have a very special guest joining us today. It's one of our customers who uses our podcast Accreditation, a man called Julien Haye. He is the founder of a company called Aevitium. So Julien, welcome to the CPD Group podcast. Thank you very much for joining us today. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Julien. Tell us a little bit about you and your professional background.
Well, firstly, good morning. Thank you very much for having me here today as well. It's a pleasure to join you today for this discussion. So you probably pick up on my accent. I'm coming from France, even though I've been living in the UK since 2008, actually, so it's been a while. On the personal side, my husband and I have a little girl, and we're actually expecting another little girl. So it's
beautiful.
The family is expanded.
Excellent.
For background, I have 26 years of experience in the financial services industry. I worked as a trader. I worked in finance, treasury, transformation strategy. And over the past few years, about 13 years, I was been working in risk, primarily as a chief risk officer. And the past couple of years, I actually decided to become independent with one of my objectives was to write a book, which I've done, and it's going to be published in a few weeks' time. And it was also to launch the Risk Master podcast we're going to talk about today, and also work with more organizations more broadly. So I work extensively with fintech charities. I'm on the board of a few of them as well.
Excellent stuff. It sounds like you've been busy over the years.
Yeah, I have my hands in multiple pies.
Yes, it sounds like it. So yeah, before we come on to, a little bit more about the Risk Masters podcast itself, tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your continuous professional development. Because as you can imagine here at the CPD Group, we're big on CPD and continual professional development. It's what we do. So tell us a little bit about what kind of CPD you've been involved in the financial industry throughout your career.
Here I've done quite a few things over time. And firstly, I would say I'm a strong believer in personal development more broadly, whether it's learning on the job, whether it's taking CPD, accredited certification and diplomas. For example, I think it's very important. So I have an MBA. I've done that already a long time ago. I also have a FRM, so I'm a certified risk manager as well. Which has its own CPD accreditation, as you probably know. I worked extensively as well on taking learning. So I have a certification in payment, for example, climate risk, etc. All of that comes with CPD accreditation as well, and continuous learning. And for me, it's quite important to be able to keep learning in that way and maintain my knowledge base as we go. And so I take a lot of LinkedIn courses, which I don't think actually a lot of them are CPD accredited, but it's I think they have a broad range of view. And for my own scene, I also give courses which are CPD accredited, including with the CPD group and webinars as well. So I do quite a fair bit, either to give back or actually to learn myself.
Fantastic. So we do a lot of accreditation for financial related, whether it be events, courses, podcasts like your own, so is there any kind of current trends going on in the financial industry that professionals should really be focused on for 2025?
Three things come to mind, right? Artificial intelligence, you can't escape it.
Of course.
It's ubiquitous, so it's everywhere, and we keep talking about that. Clearly, climate is another one, which, and I would say more broadly ESG. Whatever people think about it, I think climate, we can see things are changing, especially if you work in finance, it is quite critical. I work in risk, so the governance aspect as well is very critical to me. Automation, machine learning, those are kind of trends you can see. The other aspect, again, with a risk background, things are changing quite a lot. And the job as a risk manager actually is changing quite a lot. And as a result, people need to renew their background. I don't think they're going to have a choice. Whether it's the application of AI to risk management and business management more broadly, machine learning, whatever you call it, the job is fundamentally changing and faster than what I've experienced in 26 years. And that for me is the other thing that we're seeing a lot, the acceleration of new technology. The need to renew ourselves, in my experience, has never been that fast. And when you look into the progress that GenAI has done in the past 2 years, initially it was, you didn't want to use it practically because it was, let's be honest, very poor.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the quality is much, much, much higher, and you can really use it to help you day in and out. I think we're going to come back to that, but another aspect I think connected to that pace of change is disruption and predictability. We are moving away from a linear world. When I started working, things were pretty much predictable. If you had certain things in place, you kind of knew where you were going. That's gone. And I'm going to touch down on that actually in my next podcast with Roger Spitz, who is very much focused on that. And I will give you a bit more background about that. And I think more broadly around communication and building that resilience, I think is absolutely critical. So quite a broad range of things, but ultimately change is happening extremely fast. We need to be resilient. We need to learn from it. We need to be able to communicate appropriately.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, just, focusing on AI only there. I mean, it's applicable in every industry now, isn't it? And we're seeing more and more of people doing, training delivery around AI specifically because it is, as you say, it's becoming more prevalent across every industry, and people are starting to use it daily, so it is important that people understand what it is and how it works, So looking at that specifically, going back to CPD and continuing professional development training, what do you think really makes that top quality training course?
Firstly, it has to be current.
Yes.
And we just talked about AI, right? So let's start with that. If you start about typewriting while we're at the day where you can actually have a GenAI doing the work for you, you're completely outpriced. So you're out of the market. So that's, for me, it has to be current. It has to be adaptive and evolve quickly, while still having those foundational aspects. For me, and GenAI and AI in general is a very good example of that. I see people using AI having absolutely no idea what they're actually using it for and what they're talking about. And they don't, I think it's critical to actually understand the basic that sits behind, not only AI itself, but actually the topic you're using it for. Because otherwise you're going to get things out. Let's be honest, I'm a big user of ChatGPT, for example. Sometimes it's a bit creative in what it comes back with. And if you don't know what you're talking about, you're going to play back certain things which are fundamentally false.
Yes.
And so having those foundations, there's no shortcuts. It's a bit like playing a sport. Yes, you can be very good at first, but if you don't build this foundation in, you will never evolve to a very high level. It's the same here. In a risk management space, I think firstly, risk management is as actual as ever, right? So it's typical and it will remain. It's evolving, but it's definitely remains there. Governance and decision-making for me are absolutely must-haves. Whether you work in large organization or run your own business, you absolutely need to understand and make informed decision. I was presenting in front of boards not long ago, and one of the board directors asked me, okay, what do we do if we disagree with what you're saying or we don't know? Like, my job in a risk base is to make sure you make informed decision. In the end, it is your decision, but you need to understand why you're making that decision. And it's the same with professional development, and things are never static, so they need to be able to evolve. The last point I will say, and that's purely about learning itself. I'm not a big fan of theory. For me, I'm actually tend to learn by doing, but theory needs to meet practice. And embedding case studies and examples in whatever continuous learning is in place is absolutely critical. Otherwise, it kind of miss a mark. Give a lot of training as well with CPD accredited organization. I always mix. That's the way it should work, and that's what it means in practice.
Yeah, fantastic. That's some really good advice there. Thank you very much, Julien. And just something there for the listeners and for the viewers that Julien touched on was about AI generating content. It's on its own. Okay, we must make sure that we're checking the AI content for its relevance and to make sure it is up to date and it is pulling facts and figures that are current and up to date. Because we do see a lot of information coming, which you can tell has been written by AI, and a lot of it is outdated or slightly irrelevant even. So just please be careful. If you are using AI to generate your content that you're going to submit to us, make sure you review it and fact check every single piece of it that comes back. Okay. So yes, thank you for touching on that, Julian. That's quite helpful for us.
You must see a lot of that actually in your application for CPD accredited content.
Absolutely. It's becoming a little bit more, lots of people are trying to save time in a way by using AI to generate their content. But sometimes it's not been fully reviewed before submission. So yeah, it's an important point to make. Absolutely. So going on to your own podcast then. So Risk Masters, where did it come from? What's the idea behind it? And why did you feel that, gaining CPD accreditation for the podcast would be beneficial to you?
So if I unpick your question, where it came from, firstly, I found it was very important to promote role models in the industry. In fact, I deliberately decided to start promoting female role model when I started the podcast. So if you look into the first few episodes, you're going to see only female risk executive and actually board level. Just to get that platform around how people got where they got to and what are they working on. More broadly, my objective was to have discussions that are accessible to the wider public around risk management, how that dovetails into decision-making in business and organizational strategy and leadership as well. So if and when you listen to the podcast, you're going to see the content are approached more from a top-down, what does that mean, rather than go very deep around, okay, this is how scenario testing works for climate risk, right? Which can be extremely complex. I'm not intending to do that here. It's more about the so what and how executives look into risk management, whether it's executive or board level. In addition to that, the CPD accreditation for me was to give that additional quality check, right? If that makes sense, and also make it relevant for people like myself who are also accredited and need to have that time. So I think it was a double benefit in that sense. The final thing is that for the podcast itself, I wanted to have that personal touch that also connect back to professional career. In fact, there's not a single discussion where the two are not intertwined. People explaining how they ended up, like the first interview with Teridion, she explained how she ended up at board level coming from the trading floor. And that complete career path was actually driven from a personal level, not from a professional level.
Excellent.
And so that connection, I think people need to understand that you can't really disconnect your personal from your professional side. We all make professionally driven decisions because of our personal situation. And so that I wanted to bring that personal touch and human touch into the discussion as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now, you must cover a range of topics. I mean, financial risk management is obviously the core to it all. But do you touch upon a variety of different topics with a variety of different professionals, or is it very much focused down that core line of risk management?
No, it's very wide. In fact, Roger Spitz is a good example of that, right? He, by the very nature of what he does, he touches a lot on risk management, but his area of expertise is actually foresight disruption. Right. I talked with Michelle Wooker, who is another author on grey rhinos, and grey rhinos are about that concept of that very big thing that is in front of you, that is running toward you and is going to squash you, and the tendency of human nature to ignore them. And so it's, again, very relevant from a risk management standpoint, even though the primary topic is not necessarily risk management. So it's looking into risk from different lenses, making sure people actually understand how that interconnection work.
Super. I mean, are people able to approach you to become a guest on your podcast, or is it very much invitation only and you reach out to the professionals that you invite to join you?
Both. And for me, it's important that people can actually explain what it means, what they do in a context of simple terms, and that connection back to the so what from a business or say top management or board level experience. If people are interested in going to very technical discussion, this is not the right place. I'll be very transparent with that. Which means I tend to select as well people from that perspective around they need to be able to talk through to the audience practically in a way that is understandable. And for me, the test is I work in partnership with Wisconsin. I use their recording studio, and the guy who's doing the recording head when it comes to me at the end and say, I understood everything, I'm like, great, this is exactly what I wanted. At least it was at the right level of discussion while covering a broad topic.
Super. And where can people find your podcast? I mean, where's the best place for them to go to actually listen?
So you have a lot of the players of choice, right? Whether it's Apple, Spotify, etc. You can find it on LinkedIn and on my website. Sorry, you can find it on LinkedIn as well. I run a newsletter with each episode as well. So there is a broad range of venues for you guys to actually find it and listen to it.
Fantastic, fantastic. So now just focusing a little bit more on the accreditation side of your podcast. So you've mentioned, why you did it, for the credibility and for that kind of extra, checking and making sure that it is fit for purpose, etc. But have you found it's made a difference at all to actually promotions of your podcasts?
It has. In fact, from the beginning, that's something I had in mind. I work, as I mentioned, in partnership with Risk.net. All their content is CPD accredited. That means they can leverage some of the content in the backend as well. That's the first thing, which is very important for me. The second thing is that it opens up as a wide range of listeners as a result. Whether you're risk professional, auditors, compliance officers, or working in completely different type of work, the discussion we're having can be relevant to your ongoing learning. There are many, many, many continuous development programs out there, which means I want to be able to reach quite broadly to a wide audience. The other thing is that when I was listening and searching actually to other podcasts, there's not that many CPD accredited podcasts out there, actually, strangely enough. So some of the large risk management organizations like GARP, for example, definitely have their own podcast, which is CPD accredited. But more broadly, when you look across the very large number of podcasts out there, there's not that many. And so again, that stamp of quality and making that bit of a difference for me was also critical there.
Super, super. So just out of interest, why did you choose the CPD group? I'm assuming that you did your due diligence on the other organizations available to you. So what made you choose us?
Offering, you have a broad range of CPD accredited product, right? So clearly we're talking about podcasts today, but you do webinars, trainings, etc. And simplicity of access and pricing. So in the end, for me, that was a good package in that sense. And I also like the framework you have when you're on board individual and organization as well, which explains exactly what you need to have in terms of policy, good standards, etc., which was very intuitive to use, and really helped me set up the right structure for even for my own organization.
Fantastic. And just for those listeners and viewers that aren't 100% familiar with our podcast accreditation, what happens once your podcast is accredited is you're provided with a particular link to read out to your listeners and also a unique code that's attached to your accreditation. So the listener just needs to type the code in and they will be able to download their free certificate for attending the podcast. Okay, so that process that you went through, is it something that you would recommend to other people to do?
Yes, and it's very straightforward, and I found your team extremely helpful as well.
Excellent.
So more than once I had to revert back, if for anything, just to understand when you do the first time, there are quite a number of information that are required, understanding how it's structured and even a different type of accreditation you offer, just to clarify certain points. So I found the team super helpful, responsive, and I get everything I need.
Fantastic, fantastic. So with the podcast then, you've mentioned the next one that you're doing. What's coming up in the series? I mean, what have you got planned for the future?
So Roger, I mentioned after Roger, we'll have Emmanuel Salmona, who is co-founder and CEO of Nagomi Security. We are going to talk about cyber resilience. And Breda Bootwood, who is former risk officer at the IMF and currently co-chair and visiting professor at one of the US university, And I might actually feature myself when my book is out as well. Who knows?
So you should. Absolutely, Julien. Well, it's been fantastic to hear all about it. I mean, everyone out there who's listening and watching us today, I mean, please do go and look out for the Risk Masters podcast. You know, it's really important information that Julien and the team and his guests are sharing with you. Okay, so Julien, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's been a great time talking to you. And, you know, I just wish you all the luck with your podcast moving forward.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and keep going with the great work you guys are doing.
Well, thank you very much, Julien. That is much appreciated. So, everybody, thanks very much for joining us. Julien has shared some wonderful information with you there. Please do, as I say, look out for the Risk Masters podcast, and you'll get all the information that you will need in that particular area. Okay, thank you, Julien. It's been super to meet you and great to talk to you.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.